Today, we're checking out our top 5 snare drums under £500. Welcome back to the Gear4music Drums channel, guys. I hope you're having a great day today. And as I said at the start of this video, today we are checking out our top 5 snare drums for under £500. Now, this is a pretty difficult task because under £500, there's so many snare drums from so many different brands. So what we've kind of done is we've sliced it up like under 100, under 200, under 300, under 400, and under 500, and just picked one snare from each of those categories for you to look at. We've got some very, very different snare drums, different sizes, and made out of different materials. And now I'm not saying that this is the comprehensive top 5 snare drums for under £500. This is just the picks from myself and my colleagues here at Gear4music. If you think that you have a better snare drum for under £500, please do leave it in the comments. And don't forget to give us a cheeky like and subscribe so you can catch more videos like this in the future. So right, let's get on to the first snare drum. Okay then guys, so first up in this list, we're looking at snare drums for under £100, and we've picked something a little bit different, a little bit special. So the first thing we have here is the Gretsch Mighty Mini 12" by 5.5" snare drum. Now this is, like I said, 12 by 5.5, so it's a little bit smaller than your normal average 14" snare drum. But this snare drum has a few little secrets. I think when Gretsch were designing the Mighty Mini series, really they had auxiliary snare drums in mind. So the auxiliary snare drum is the snare drum that you would probably play, not in your main snare drum zone, but on the left or anywhere else on the kit for that matter. So this snare drum does feature a clamp here, so you can mount this to a tom mount or to multiple different stands, so you can have it close, so you don't have to have an extra snare stand, which can be really handy with an auxiliary snare. But this snare drum doesn't have to be an auxiliary snare. It can also be a main snare drum, which I demonstrated with that play. I think sometimes what you want to do with an auxiliary snare drum is just crank it up as loud as possible. And I think that's a temptation, but this snare drum does have a really decent tuning range. It's a 7-ply poplar shell with a 30-degree bearing edge. So it's actually not got too many overtones. It's quite easy to tune and really easy to work with. It's got that nice Gretsch Art Deco design, chrome lugs, all chrome hardware. It's got a decent throw up on it, and it has triple flange hoops. So if you are looking for a different snare drum, we don't have a lot to spend. You get the great Gretsch name, which is a huge name in drums, and you get a really nice sounding smaller snare drum, which can really help to boost your creativity and take you out that normal 14" comfort zone. Right, that's the Gretsch Mighty Mini in 12 by 5.5. Let's move on to the next snare drum. So snare drum number 2, we're looking at the Natal Arcadia 14 by 6.5 acrylic, and specifically it's a clear acrylic snare drum. The snare drum sounds wicked, and acrylic is really in at the moment. So you've got drummers like Zach Farrow, who plays for Paramore, he's playing an acrylic kit. You've got Eddie Thrower, who's out with Busted, playing an acrylic kit. Dan Searle from Architects, also playing an acrylic kit. It's a really cool vibe, and we're seeing a big resurgence in acrylic kits. It was big in the 70s and 80s with the Ludwig Vistalite, but it kind of went away. But it's really cool to be seeing it with some of the DW kits and also some of the Ludwig kits coming back into the fold. But the thing about those kits is they are extremely expensive. A Vistalite or a DW acrylic kit is extremely expensive, and Natal are offering you a seamless acrylic shell here at a much more entry-level price, without compromising really any build quality. So this is a 14 by 6.5 acrylic snare drum, and this comes under £200. So this is the next thing in the price bracket. So if you're looking for that intense acrylic sound, but you don't want to have to spend loads of money and you want that cool acrylic look because all your favorite drummers are all playing acrylic kits at the moment, this is definitely the snare drum for you. So snare number 3, unbelievably coming in under £300, is the Tama Starclassic Performer 14 by 6.5 maple birch hybrid in beautiful caramel Aurora finish. Now, if you know anything about Tama, the Starclassic is kind of the upper to mid-range, and the Starclassic Performer kind of sits just a little bit under the Starclassic, but not really by much. I mean, I have a Starclassic kit, walnut birch, and it's absolutely fantastic. I love it. And this has got all the hallmarks of that kit. So you've got the same die-cast hoops on the snare, on the top and the bottom, your quintessential Tama lugs. It's a really well-presented shell with a really nice lacquer. You've got a really beautiful throw-off, which just has really nice action to it, and the great 24 strand, I'm going to say. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. 24 strand snare wire. It feels like a 24 strand. I think it sounds like a 24 strand. In fact, let's have a little look. Let's have a little look. Yeah, it's 24 strand. It's got to be 20 or 24 on the bottom there. And it's a really sort of responsive, great snare. As you can see, the first thing I want to do is hit it as hard as possible, because these snare drums are really loud, and with die-cast hoops to really activate the drum to its full potential, sometimes you've got to whack it, and it sounds absolutely fantastic, and it really is a joy to play. And there are many, many, many snare drums out there in the world which are far, far more expensive than this, which are not as good to play or won't fit a certain style of music, like heavier genres, as good as something like this will. And that's why you've got to, you know, have a little listen to a lot of different snare drums. But really, Tama, at this sort of price point, with these specs, I think it's one of the best snare drums that you can actually get under £300. That is the Tama Starclassic Performer 14 by 6.5 in Caramel Aurora. Let's move on to the next snare. So next up we have the British powerhouse, which is the Premier Elite 14 by 8 snare drum in satin walnut burst. Now the walnut is just the color of the finish. The drum is actually made of walnut. So the shell itself is 4 plies. You've got 2 plies of maple and 2 plies of birch. And what's interesting about this drum, which lends itself to its vintage heritage, is we have 2 1-inch re-rings on the inside of this drum that are made out of beech. And these definitely do aid to the sound of the drum and give it that sort of older, premier feel. When I was playing this drum, it was like an exploratory mission. You know, it was a journey. I got to try out a few different tunings, see what was working for me creatively. And when I was playing along the snare drum then, I was finding different tones in different places, and I found it to be a really musical instrument, which is great. And on the subject of tunings, with all these snare drums, I'm just picking a tuning which I find comfortable to play within. And that's probably like medium to kind of high, or with this one, I like a little bit more overtone, it to be a little bit funky, so that lends itself to those kind of grooves. With the Tama, it's a little bit more choked because of those die-cast hoops, whereas this is far more lively, and it's a really, really great sounding drum. All of the drums today have either got ambassadors or G2s on them, so they kind of have similar head configurations, but really it's about where I'm finding comfortable to play the drum, and I'm not trying to tune them all the same because they're all extremely different drums. And this drum is definitely full of character. It sits just above £400. The link for this drum and all the drums is in the description, so you can see the exact price. With the markets, prices change all the time, so I don't want to give you any exact prices, but this sits just above £400 at the moment. So that is the Premier Elite 14x8 in satin walnut burst. Let's move on to the next snare drum. Next up, we have a studio workhorse, I would say. It's the Yamaha Recording Custom 14x5.5 Aluminium snare drum. This snare drum is control in a box, I would say. Aluminium is, in terms of all the metals that we make snare drums out, I would say it's the driest. It's the easiest to control. I think that's probably because it's the softest type of metal that we use to make snare drums. This snare drum also features die-cast hoops. Again, that's going to control the overtones of the snare drum. So you can get overtones from the snare drum, but it's far more controlled. And the whole thing with Recording Custom is it's about making drums that work really well in the studio, kind of already sound maybe a little bit pre-EQ'd. This snare drum was actually made in conjunction with Mr. Steve Gadd himself, one of the most famous recording drummers of all time. And you kind of get that when you're playing the drum. It's very sensitive in terms of the sensitivity that you get from the snares and the bottom heads. And it's a really all-round great snare drum to play. Aluminium is definitely one of my favorite materials to make snare drums out of, because you can get a dry sound or you can crank it. You're getting some overtone, which is nice, and it's nice to have a longer note, but it's still a controlled overtone, and you can take care of it if it becomes too much extremely quickly because of the control of the die-cast hoops with the aluminium shell. You've got these beautiful Recording Custom lugs and all the amenities that come with the Recording Custom. This snare drum, again, still sits under £500. And I know people that will pay upwards of £1,200 for a snare drum that maybe is a little bit more fancy, but doesn't sound as good as this. So you really don't have to go. The whole purpose of this video was to show that every single one of these snare drums sounds amazing in its own way. The thing that kind of goes up is where the snare drum's made. So where the snare drum's made is very important to what the price is and who it's made by and what country it's made in. So some of your more American stuff like the UDW, Ludwig stuff is going to be more expensive if it's made in America. The materials that the drums are made out of, that's also a factor into how expensive they are, and if they have to be imported as well, that's also a factor. But really, you can get an amazing snare sound for under 200, under 300, under 400, and under 500. And then I think anything kind of after that is just a little bit extra, and the margins of sound, so like the sound from like 100 to 500 can be quite big in terms of quality, especially in terms of build quality and how long the snare drum is going to last. But after £500, the sound, like the amount that you get for the amount that you pay kind of becomes incrementally smaller and smaller and smaller, and you can get an absolutely beautiful, fantastic snare drum for under £500. I mean, this Tama drum sounded incredible. Every single drum that we've played today was amazing, and it's definitely not going to break the bank. Please let me know what you think. If you think I'm completely wrong, then please let me know. Music is, after all, subjective. And if you hated the way my snare sounded and you've got any tuning tips for me, leave that in the comments as well. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can catch more videos like this in the future. We've got loads of videos coming. I've been Theo with Gear4music Drums. Have a great day. Bye.